Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
Doing well.
We almost look like twins today. They're going to laugh at us.
Well, we have a dress code.
Exactly.
So, anyway, I wish people would have a political code of promoting liberty rather than authoritarianism.
That would be nice.
That would be a good code to follow. But of course, you know, the issue of liberty allows so much variation, so much freedom of choice. The only thing that is rigidly held is the belief in liberty to do what they want to do without hurting people. But that's the big story. But the big story yesterday in the news happened to be who might be the next vice president, who might be another president. Yeah. It's pretty darn significant. It's all about Kamala Harris, and people were on pins and needles playing the game for weeks and weeks, and they played it out. Finally, they had to tell us what kind of individual we're going to have. But generally speaking, I would look at this and say, does it really matter at this point when they have 6 people to pick from? Is it really going to make a difference? And they play this game. But obviously, it does make a difference. But you know, the difference in this whole process that bothers me, even before we had, the most recent history in 16 and on back, is how we get our vice president, who's this a heartbeat away from the president.
Yeah.
You know, they win, there's there, and a lot of them can become president. And it's just picked by the guy that wins the nomination. Originally in our history, the person who was vice president who came in with the second amount of votes. Huh. So, and then the party system developed after that. But if you came in second, you were the vice president. But they didn't like that because the views might be different. So I suggested that, well, look, if tongue-in-cheek, of course, because I don't think anybody was listening, is if they're picking, why don't you pick the second choice? Why are you picking people by their color of their skin? We're not supposed to do that. We're supposed to be by the process, the democratic process. So therefore, we would have Biden and Bernie Sanders. If Bernie Sanders should be the vice president, who should complain? That's the democratic process. Yeah. But no. Back then, before that primary, whoever heard of those six candidates they had, and Kamala Harris was a little bit well known, but the average person probably really got to know about her yesterday because her name was announced, and now we're getting to find out what she's all about. But she's hardly democratically elected. But some people say that, boy, Biden's way ahead, Trump's going to lose, Biden's going to be president. And all kinds of conspiracy theories exist there because presidents usually aren't presidents. You know, George W. Bush wasn't a president. Cheney was the president, and the deep state was the president, and that's generally the way it works. And I don't even think the current president can ignore the whole concept of the deep state. He knows what it's all about. You know, he's been warned about it. Yeah. So it is very important in that regard, but ultimately, it's what they believe in, and as you and others have looked into this on Kamala Harris, it's probably pretty hard to find some good things about her political views.
It is, and really, I think Bob Wenzel, our friend at Target Liberty, said, this is really the victory of Hillary Clinton.
That's right.
Because she really is a Hillary Clinton. It was kind of a sad start because, I don't know if you saw this piece, but Biden was calling Kamala Harris probably on Skype on his computer to tell her he chose her. And he had some notes in front of him saying, I'm calling you to, and MSNBC photoshopped those notes out. He couldn't even, and it's very sad and it's a terrible thing. But Kamala Harris is one of those people that are the worst of all worlds. And that's how Hillary was too. When it comes to domestic policy, she's horribly authoritarian. When it comes to foreign policy, she's an absolute war hawk. Our friends at 21st Century Wire did a kind of a short little list, and I sent it over to you this morning. So a bill of particulars on her. Very little governing experience. She hasn't even finished a single term as an elected senator. When she was the Attorney General of California, she locked up 1,500 people for marijuana, and then she laughed about smoking marijuana when they asked her if she's ever had it. She pushed for the execution of a death row inmate, and she blocked the admission of exculpatory evidence in his case. She kept inmates beyond their jail term as cheap labor for the state of California. She's an extreme promoter of the Russiagate conspiracy theory, which has been thoroughly disproven. She still holds to that. She's in favor of regime change in Syria. She's extremely close to AIPAC. She even had this weird statement. When I was a kid, I didn't sell Girl Scout cookies. I ran around collecting money to plant trees in Israel. You know, what a cheerful lady. So there's more we can go into. But, oh yeah, here's one. You're going to like this one. She wants to spend $11 trillion on the Green New Deal to make us green in America.
And she's probably not worried about where this money comes from.
Yeah, it's magic.
Modern monetary theory. We're going to have deficits and printed money. Isn't that what we've been doing? It must work real well, but I guess the warning signs are out there. It doesn't work all that well, and if they expect to expand the government as much as they'd like, they're going to run into some roadblocks. But you know, there's been a lot of talk over the last maybe decade about identity politics, which really is opposite of what libertarian politics is like, because, of course, we think the best way to bring people together and integrate is to have the important identifier is the individual.
Yeah.
And the individual is seen. So I think a libertarian generally would be a distance from all this identity politics. And when I hear about it, it's always annoyed me that if you bring people together by having your blindfolds on, and you bring them together by what Martin Luther King talked about, character,
yeah.
This would be, you know, so much better. But no, they don't accept that. And you know, the Congress was everything was, you know, Black Caucus did this and this, and they have these different caucuses. And I really put a lot of blame on the media.
Yeah.
They are so determined. Everything, you know, is race. You know, immediately, well, there's 72% of the Black people are going to do this, and 18% of the Hispanics are going to do this. Well, you know, maybe that's incidental history, but the whole idea, that's top of the news,
Yeah.
you know, that they're all one people. Now, we do have some Black libertarian friends that feel very offended that they just get lumped into that. Some a person like Walter Williams Thompson, so they want to be an individual.
Yeah.
They don't want to be, you know, in there. Walter Williams, I used to hear him say, "I don't even want to be a block leader." You know? But he says, and I don't need a block leader.
Yeah.
He says he wants to just be an individual, and that's of course why he has libertarian instinct. But that issue didn't come up. You mentioned the things that everybody will be talking about, but the whole thing is how they can switch, how she can be the sharpest person against Biden in the debates, and now he's their best friends.
Yeah.
You know, so that's how deeply held views that they have. But the deeply held view is, how do we move along radical Marxism and spending and all big government programs? That's their religion, really. And if they win this, not that the Republicans, you know, are angels on this issue,
no.
but they can't possibly be as bad as what we're seeing here. And it's amazing that there's a lot of Democrats that are moderates, you know, in the sense that they're not libertarians. And matter of fact, they end up sort of having a libertarian streak in them, because a good liberal will be sympathetic to civil liberties, as we believe, and they'll be sympathetic to less wars overseas. But that doesn't seem, you don't hear that at all. You just hear hate,
Yeah.
do this, and we will. The streets are to be destroyed, and then the true Marxist position is going to march in and bring about utopia. That's what they work on, and I hope we do our job well enough with the help of many others to make sure that does not come about. But right now, that exists out there, and I think ultimately our side wins, because I think it's such a better philosophy. But that doesn't mean we're going to win in the election. It doesn't mean we're going to win next year. It means that ultimately people will come to their senses when the total bankruptcy, both moral and financial, is apparent, and then people have to do something else. So I hope the seeds are out there, and that's what we'll continue to do, is plant the seeds in these elections to show what they should be talking about.
Hopefully try to. You know, it's a curious choice in a way, Kamala Harris. I mean, it appears that literally, I mean, he even said it himself. I mean, he chose someone because of their gender and of their race, and That sounds kind of racist
Yeah,
to me.
right.
But you think about her, she's from California, which is already solidly blue, a solid blue state. And he has someone who is very hostile to fracking, to oil exploration, to coal mining. And, you know, the reason why Hillary lost in 16, among other things, was that she lost a lot of the Rust Belt states. She lost Pennsylvania. She lost places like Michigan, West Virginia, Kentucky. She lost in all these places where people actually go out and work for a living. And now instead, he's picked someone from the elites, someone who really has been appointed all the way up to her positions. And I just wonder, you know, just from a sense of an electoral sense, what's going to happen with her. There's also the issue of, as you just pointed out, the progressive wing of the party. Apparently, Biden believes that he has those people in the bag, because there's no way you can argue that Kamala Harris is a progressive from their point of view. She's a Hillaryite. She likes putting people in jail. I saw a video yesterday that reminded me, she was interviewed about, she had a brainy idea to put parents in jail if their kids miss school. And she was laughing about it. And she reminded me of Hillary when she was laughing about killing Gaddafi. Kamala Harris was just laughing her head off about throwing single mothers in the slammer, single black mothers in the slammer because their kids missed school. I mean, it's from an electoral perspective, I just don't get it.
Let me make one more point about this, because I want to talk about another subject too, which is a good news thing. But to me, it always struck me, even before this conflict of the last 10, 15 years, was how did it happen where the nominee has this much power to pick? I know there's a lot of people, you know, the deep state's already influencing that nominee, but still, it's the nominee who really gets to make the pick.
Yeah.
And that's a tremendous amount of power when we're a country that's bragged so much about democracy, you know, the dictatorship of the democracy. They're not even good Democrats. They're good at listening to the deep state, but it is a lot of power put in the hands of few, and but ultimately we can sort of put that aside, because ultimately the only thing that really counts will be the ideas that the people are willing to accept, and that's our job, is to try to influence people to saying, you know, it's good not to go to wars and not start war and all that killing and dying. It's good maybe to have a balance. That's our goal. But anyway, I want to go on to something else, which is good. And we're going to talk about Dr. Fauci, but not necessarily in the usual fashion. Yeah. I think I'll read just this headline. Trump taps esteemed anti-Fauci Stanford doctor for COVID team. Huge game changer. And what do we know about this? This means he has another advisor, and you've looked into this pretty carefully, and boy, it sounds great what this person has. Early on, I think he was giving good lectures on this back in April, wasn't he? In April, he was talking about what we should do and shouldn't do, and finally, we're getting him in there, but there's still some infiltration of the opposite view in the administration. But this is good. Trump's picked him, and I think this is something that might move it. You know, if it's a good idea, if it's the right thing, it should help him politically too, because he's been told, oh, don't do it because if you're not for lockdown and all this stuff. But I think that is all switched up. People are sick of the mask, and they're seeing the statistics, and they know that the rate of people dying and the threat of all this is all concocted. So this is good news about him being appointed. I hope we hear about him a whole lot.
Yeah, Dr. Scott Adams. You say trust the science. He's definitely a scientist. He was the former chief of neuroradiology at Stanford University Medical Center, and now he's a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution. And that's important, I think, because he has a medical background, but at Hoover he also has a policy background. And that's what Fauci never had. They even asked Fauci about the fallout from lockdowns, and he hadn't really thought about it, what if things. So Dr. Atlas is on the team. President Trump announced it 2 days ago that he's joining the team. That doesn't mean that his views will prevail, but it means that at least his views will get a hearing. And as you said, he did a piece in The Hill on April 22nd. April 22nd, we republished it at the Ron Paul Institute in part in the website. But the piece was titled, "The Data is In. stop the panic, and end the total isolation. And it was a great article. And in fact, if we put up this next, these are the 5 main facts that he said in April. If we have this next, the next clip, the next JPEG that we have. Fact 1, the overwhelming majority of people do not have any significant risk of dying of COVID-19. Fact 2, protecting older at-risk people eliminates hospital overcrowding. Fact 3, vital herd immunity is actually prevented by total isolation policies, prolonging the problem. This was we just said yesterday. Fact 4, people are dying from being denied other medical care due to hypothetical COVID-19 fatality projections that turned out to be garbage. And finally, fact 5, we have a clearly defined population at risk who can be protected with targeted measures. These are his 5 main points. And if any of those get into the president's ear and he acts on them, I think it's going to be a huge
yes, and
break.
I think that opinion comes out when Trump is strictly on his own and flowing out. Sometimes when an appointment comes along, it might vary a bit. But I think this is an example of how the intellectuals are important. Ideas are important, good and bad. So here, we as libertarians, always looking and learning and putting things together and want to talk about this, we can get support by discovering this individual. And here, we don't know if he identifies himself as a libertarian or just a good scientist or what. But the information in this sense, he has, you pointed out, his intellectual abilities and background are solid. So we're able to take that and we can reinforce our ideas, and other people say, yes, this isn't just Daniel and Ron. No, we have some smart people out there.
Thankfully.
No, I think it is. I think it's support of the intellectuals. But the other side just assumes it. The intellectuals on TV, the media on there, they have all this reinforcement of bad ideas and are convinced. And they're also convinced in the negative aspect of it. If you don't agree with the other scenario, then you're unpatriotic and you hate people, you're killing people. You could be charged for murder because you're out there doing violence. But this Dr. Adams has the credibility to help us out to reinforce the ideas that we believe in.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, we do have a short clip of him. This is him on Laura Ingraham, and she's been very good on this too. But let's watch if we can get this queued up. Let's watch just about 20 seconds of him recently on the Laura Ingraham show. It's really worth looking at. And we see even the CDC director saying that the lockdowns are killing more than COVID is killing. So now we have this backup. So let's pause and take a deep breath and say, maybe some good news is happening.
No, I think this has to be good news. But, sometimes our good news stories fade after a day or two and somebody else will come. Because, the drug companies aren't going to be very happy. You mean we might not have to have 14 billion shots for vaccines and all this nonsense? Maybe the doctors can use hydroxychloroquine. If this attitude is there, because it would be more freedom of choice. So no, it is good news, and I hope he gets a lot of attention, and he's in a position where he has credibility, and that's what we need. Yeah. I do want to go on and talk about a couple other little things. What is going on now. But, we've talked about disappointment, how wonderful it was. I can tell you another one that I suspect you're going to say, hold on, we can't put this in the category of a good appointment, because we know a lot about this individual, more than we knew about Dr. Alice, and that is Elliot Abrams.
Yeah.
Elliot Abrams has been around a long time. He's been in trouble at times. He always seems to get out of it. But his main flaw is his ideas are super hawkish neocon.
Yeah.
But guess what? He's been in 3 Republican administrations, and Trump has used him in Venezuela. And now we can't expect that if we try to persuade our president on Iran, using that a little bit differently, now he's the envoy to Iran. So and he's a dangerous person, but it looks like he's going to be around for a while.
It's bad news in a way, but his predecessor was also very, very bad with Iran. But basically, Abrams is the point man for regime change in Venezuela and Iran. That's essentially what it is. The only good news, the only silver lining in this dark cloud, and unfortunately the president, when it comes to foreign policy, he's made some bad choices, Pompeo being the number one, at least right now. The only good news with Elliott Abrams taking more on his plate is that his track record is one of failure over and over. Completely failed in Venezuela. He has a track record of failure. He failed in the Iran-Contra and almost went to jail. He's not very good at what he does, but the bad side about that is he does a lot of damage in the meantime. There are a lot of bodies in Central America that would not have been dead were it not for people like Elliott Abrams making policy in the 80s.
There's another issue that came out this week about colleges opening. And of course, we think they all should essentially be open. But now they're tinkering around the edges. You're saying, yes, we're going to open, but no football games and all this. But we're going to have some rules and some regulations. You can go to class, but you have to sit here, but you can't have any fun. This sort of thing. You can't have a party. And all this, it's inundated with rules. And I think these were devised at Duke University, but they tend to be liberal on these social issues. But that is something that happens. But I don't see how. It's almost would be terrible if people. Oh, look! This is wonderful. We won. We can go to the campuses, but they really didn't win because this is a teensy little bit of regulated freedom. It's regulated, but it's no longer freedom because the bureaucrats are going to do it, and there's punishments for this. It's not like if you don't do it, you don't get to go to lunch or something. You can get kicked out of school and fined and all kinds of problems if you don't follow. And it's not one or two. We see the libertarians have not too many rules. One, don't ever hurt anybody.
Yeah.
But this is the whole thing. This is so bureaucratic nonsense, as if opening schools are really worthwhile. If you have to, it conditions people. Okay, I'm free now. What do I have to do to stay free? Well, here's the list, the whole page, a list of things that they have to do.
And Adam Dick wrote about this at the Ron Paul Institute website. But, this is a school you kind of remember, I think, right? This is from Duke, your old alma mater. It doesn't sound like it's going to be a fun autumn at Duke. Wear a mask or face covering in all public places. Maintain physical distance. Wash your hands often. You got to use an app to monitor and report your symptoms if you have any. No large gatherings. On and on and on it goes. And it's going to ruin. And in fact, I saw that UT in Austin is having a new rule, no parties this semester at all. Good luck with that if you're going to tell kids to not do that. And let's hope that it fails, but they just can't let go. But what I think is insidious about the Duke thing is that they make it sound so voluntary. It's a voluntary thing to us protect each other, but if you don't sign it, you're kicked out of school. That's the authoritarian approach.
Yeah, that is. So I think we better.
Yeah, I'll get close to that. I have a couple of quick things to go through if we can put that next clip up, and I'll do these 1, 2, 3. These are one-liners. This is the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. The director of that said, "You got to wear your mask, even if you're at home alone, doing a Zoom call with your colleagues. That's what you have to do." He talked about, here's what he said, if you wear a mask, even if you're at home, to participate in a virtual meeting, set the safety example, which shows you as a public service employee that cares about the safety of others. So
they mentioned another thing, and I'll soften the term, even if you're in bed with your wife.
Yeah, put it on, put it on. Next clip really quick. Let's go through these really quick. And these are just a couple of things that I noted this morning as a kind of one-liners. Manhattan. Retail chains abandon Manhattan. It is unsustainable. They can't do business there. And in the article, they mention a person who owns a 1,000-seat restaurant in Manhattan. He ends couple of other restaurants. He says, I will never own another restaurant in Manhattan again. It's an absolute ghost town. The shopping streets are empty. And let's do one final one, and I'll close out with this. Mario Cuomo, he is not going to allow a probe into the fact that he sent a bunch of sick people into their nursing homes and killed a bunch of them, right? He put the kibosh on that. Don't you dare look into this. He says it's only purely partisan. Tell that to the family members of the thousands of people who died because of his horrible policy of purposely infecting them with COVID.
You know, when you describe what's going on in New York, it's going on in a lot of parts of the country where the inner cities are closing down, and it's related to all this activity going on. And a lot of good people lament this, and they're so despondent about, isn't this a tragedy? They lose their shopping centers, the people who had gone to these stores. They know about these families that most of them are small family shops, and the far left wants to really help the poor people and the middle class. They go and destroy what the middle class has, but they do not lament it. It's a lot of people do. The large majority lament the whole fact that this is happening, but the people who I believe, and others have joined me in this belief, the people who really are stirring the pot, because there are some people who believe that their philosophy can best benefit by chaos and bankruptcy and turmoil, because that is part of a Marxist doctrine, and they keep doing it. But they have no conscience. They're sociopath and psychopath, and they don't have a conscience. They can do that. They can see 100 businesses and their property burned to a crisp, and people dying on it, and they go home. Good day today. Yeah. Look at what we did today, and we killed a cop, and it's so sick. And I keep thinking, if this prevails, even though I think the large majority of people in this country would agree with what we're saying here. But if this prevails and they go along and keep voting these people in, you don't even have to start with just the presidency. Why are these people running their cities and townships and states and all this? Because they're the ones who, they release violent prisoners, and then they get rid of the police force. Yeah. They defund the police force. And then they wonder, crime's going up again. Oh, that's Trump's fault because he didn't send enough money or something like. Oh, he wouldn't send in the troops it's just so tragic. So we shouldn't lose this fight. I mean, it's so overwhelmingly against this tyrant, this issue of a tyrant telling us what to do and run our city. So that to me is sad.
Yeah, it is for sure. I'm all done now.
Okay, very good.
I've expended my material.
I got to think fast because I want to finish on a positive note.
Good.
Of course.
That's good.
No, and then we can restate the positive note. The doctor that is being appointed, as advisor on the coronavirus, and Trump is advisor, and he's with us on the issues, and we want to make sure he's successful and nobody comes along and tries to discredit him. Not that they won't try, they're going to do that. But no, it is a battle, and I keep talking about the battle of ideas, and the good ideas should prevail, but they don't always prevail because the worst dictators in the world have been influenced by, so-called intellectuals. But this is where I'm optimistic, is I do think the ideas of liberty still are alive and well, and have been kept alive, and that more people are accepting the fact that we can get information from the internet without depending on our university professors, and not depending on our politicians, and not depending on the mass media, which has been a disaster for bringing about truth. And I think Trump is on to something when he talks about fake news. And I think a lot of people, I imagine that probably was one of the major reasons why he won, 4 years ago, is because he confronted the people who were doing this. But we want to do our very best to promote what we call the cause for liberty. And that to me is the answer to so many of our problems, because you can accept everybody at their face value. Color of skins mean nothing. And the individual's personal preference mean nothing, except for the one personal obligation, is that you have no right to hurt other people or take other people's property. Well, that sounds good. We all believe that. But the one thing that has happened There's a lot of people who don't believe it, but most people do believe I shouldn't steal from my neighbor. But the big problem is even the best conservatives will frequently say, but the government can do this and do this and do this and tax and do all the things that is based on force. They're doing the things that if we as individuals did, we'd be arrested because it would be considered theft. But when the government doesn't, nobody challenges it. We have to challenge the authority of government, and that's why the founders tried, to write a document that says, the federal government should be very restrained. And Article 1, Section 8 tells you when they can get involved. But they don't pay any attention to it. I saw a liberal talking on the TV the other day, and I know this has been true for a long, long time, but I've never heard it so blunt. He was explaining this. He says, what we need to do is get people to understand that the Constitution is a living, breathing document. Otherwise, it has no purpose. It has no value. So that is true. But that is a firm belief that they have. And of course, if there's a law or a rule or a fundamental principle that restrains aggression and injury and death, that should be a firm rule. But anyway, today we look at a positive appointment by Trump. We worry about the others, but we do believe that our efforts are worthwhile, mainly because we have a few people out there that will pay attention and look, and we encourage people to join us, and we appreciate their support, and also help us spread the message. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.